Alrighty. Turn that down just a little bit. It's a little bit loud, I think. We are live here. Moneyline MMA coverage of UFC 310 coming to us this Saturday. This is the last pay-per-view of 2024. It will be headlined in the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas with the prelims starting at 5 p.m. Central Time. We'll not only be returning to normal fight card times instead of Chinese times, we'll be getting a pay-per-view event in which the flyweight belt will be on the line, and Alexander Pantoja is going to be facing off against Kai Asakura, who's actually a UFC newcomer. First time that I've been able to recall a UFC newcomer getting an immediate belt shot. Of course, he had a long streak at Rizin, 13-3 at Rizin, and you got to give credit to the talent, specifically at the younger end of the weight classes, like the 135, 145 pound weight classes. Actually really do have a lot of talent in PFL, Bellator, Rizin, 1FC, and so on and so forth. So there's a couple of like high-end guys and or former UFC guys that he's fought in Rizin, like Manel Kape. To be fair, though, he did lose to Manel Kape. So that will go into our discussion as we get into these fights. But as always, we do a 5-weight system with our picks here at Moneyline MMA, in which Jose and I pick 5 of the currently 14 scheduled fights for UFC 310 and weigh them in order of confidence, with 5-weight being the most confident and 1-weight being the least confident. And with that, we're going to start with our best bets, as always, of Saturday afternoon to close off pay-per-views for 2024. My 5-weight, I'm actually not going to, I will say in this card, my 4 and my 5-weight are just about interchangeable. But for this one, I'm going to land it for an official 5-weight to continue the streak. I'm going to put it on a prelim, actually, a prelim with a lot of star power, in that a former champ, Aljamain Sterling, is facing off against Movsar Evloev. Of course, Aljamain Sterling fighting up a class from where he was the initial belt holder, fighting Evloev, who I can't act as like a super exciting fighter. He's definitely a points fighter, not the kind of guy who's going to get a finish. He certainly has finishes in his career, but in the UFC, he is a points fighter, pretty much to the T. And a lot of people find him boring because of that. And maybe because of that, and because Aljo is a former title challenger and title holder. The reason is that Evloev is minus 265 on the betting books. Sterling at plus 200. I think that's really great value for Evloev. And what we usually see with Aljamain's fights is that he has a grappling advantage, a wrestling advantage. You know, he competes in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu outside of the UFC. It's something that he has as a strength. And in this fight, I don't think he has the wrestling advantage whatsoever. And it's always possible that he finds himself on Evloev's back, in which case Evloev has reason to be concerned for sure. But I also think there's a reason Evloev has gotten through guys like Diego Lopez. Now, I do understand that was last minute replacement for Diego Lopez, but that doesn't make Diego any less dangerous. To get that win makes me a lot less nervous about a guy like Aljo getting the submission. So yeah, man, with that said, I think this is going to be similar. And I was wrong about this one, similar to Figgy Piotr Jan, right? We saw Piotr Jan just kind of dominate Figgy. He's the bigger man, or the guy at least that has more experience in that weight class. And once Figgy started to get up in the higher ranks of that weight class, he clearly faltered a little bit. And I honestly think we're going to see similar from Aljamain Sterling. He is not like, beating Calvin Kattar just isn't it for me. It's not enough. So with all that said, I got 5-weight on Evloev. Partially because of good value at minus 265 in my opinion, and also because he outduels Sterling in Sterling's own advantage spot, and from there I believe he also wins the striking game and gets a decision win. Any thoughts, Jose?
Yeah, Nick. So for this one, I actually did not put a rank on this fight just because how good Movsar Evloev is and just how much I've not seen Aljamain Sterling in this weight class yet. But as you mentioned it, Evloev is probably going to have the better wrestling most likely, so he's going to beat Aljamain Sterling in the grappling department. At least I think so. And then how they match up physically, they're both pretty much the same size in height, and Evloev doesn't really have much of a reach advantage. And when it comes to the striking, both land a high volume of punches. They both land over 4 significant strikes per minute, and they both don't absorb as much either. So that being said, I think on the feet, it's gonna be a little more equally matched on the feet, I think. And but in Sterling, like I think when it comes down to the wrestling, he's probably gonna get taken down, and I don't want to say he's gonna get I don't want to say he's going to get dominated, but it's just a really hard one to see how he's going to respond because he has really good jiu-jitsu and he may be able to possibly even submit Evloev. But I've never seen Evloev lose. It's just really hard. I want really want he's really good at going to 3 rounds as well. So I really just have not seen most of Evloev be in such a vulnerable position to really go against him. But same with Aljamain Sterling, I've not seen him enough at this weight class to also want to go against him. Because like looking at Evloev's record, Arnold Allen, Diego Lopez, and Dan Ige, his last 3 wins, all unanimous. That's just really impressive to me. And Sterling getting knocked out by O'Malley, that one was a shocker to me. So, but granted, that was at a different weight class. But that being said, yeah, this one I do like the Evloev pick, but I just do not have a ranking on it, just because I've not seen enough of Sterling as a featherweight, and I do think Evloev has the better wrestling. So if it comes down to it, I do think Evloev will out wrestle Aljamain Sterling.
Okay. Well, hey, man, I'm really glad that you agree then on the wrestling aspect of it because that was honestly the part of it that maybe would falter the most. And, man, with the confidence that you can agree that Evloev could out wrestle Sterling, man, I just think this is a money pick. You could put Evloev as, Evloev by decision really as a good bet. I think specifically, if you really want to make it, kind of a little more of juice or a little less risk, you could also add another win method in there. Maybe Evloev by KO or points. I don't think he would submit Aljamain Sterling if you ask me. So I would say Evloev KO or points. But either way, take Evloev to win this fight. Maybe parlay it with something else on this card and get yourself a little better value instead of the full minus 265 required. But with that said, we can move on to Jose's 5-weight.
Yes, so for my 5-weight, we're actually going to jump in straight to the main event for the flyweight title bout between Alexander Pantoja and Kai Asakura. Right now, Kai, he is a betting underdog at plus 210, while Pantoja is the betting favorite at minus 280. So for this one, I am going to go with Pantoja, not because I don't want to say that because I've not seen enough of Kai Asakura, even though that is true. But I do know he's legit, and the UFC, if they're putting a UFC newcomer for a title shot right away, you just know that they see something truly special in Kai and why he deserves that to get a title shot. But I feel like almost every time, like it's barely happened, but almost every time it has happened, it just really shows. It's mostly I feel like been done because the current division that the UFC has is like there's just no one else they actually truly think is good enough. Either the champion has ran through them all, or they just want to change it up and see who can challenge him. They did this with Demetrius Johnson as well, and even Anderson Silva back in the day. So when dudes are looking really good in their weight class and just beating everyone, they do venture out. But almost every time, then it's like, well, you remember why these guys are so good and why they're top, and these other if dudes in the UFC couldn't beat them, like I don't even like I think the odds of a dude outside the UFC of beating them is even less likely. The only other time I can think of was I was gonna say Holly Holm beating Ronda Rousey, but even then Holly Holm had at least one fight under her UFC belt. So that being said, yeah, I just think Alexander Pantoja is really good, and I just think the UFC. The only reason Kai is getting this is because he is a legit threat. But even then, like I just don't think he's been as competitive as Pantoja as of lately in terms of he did not fight all of 2022 at all, and then he did lose unanimously in 2021, and he does have, both guys have a good amount of losses on their record, but both also have a lot of experience. And I think this one is good. I think on the feet, Asakura will probably dominate a little more. But we've seen Pantoja also get put in some compromised positions and come out on top. And I think even though Asakura has never been submitted before, I do think Pantoja may be able to get a submission. If not, pull out a decision victory, but not, I won't say an easy one, because I do think that Pantoja will have his hand raised, but will probably look really beaten up, like cuts, so probably some cuts and stuff from Kai Asakura. So that being said, I like Pantoja a lot, and I'm not gonna choose an exact method how he'll win, but if he, but I do like his grappling advantage in this aspect. So that being said, I got Alexander Pantoja as my 5 weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
I do agree with Pantoja. I have a slightly less amount of confidence than you, though. Pantoja, to be official on that, is my 2 weight. Um, man, I pretty much what I'm saying here is that I give respect to Kai Asakura's striking ability. And to be honest, if he can keep Pantoja on the feet, that's his best bet, right? I will say Pantoja's pace and endurance is pretty much unmatched. I don't believe that Kai is going to be able to out box him via conditioning. I think it would be technique. Pantoja's kind of 1-2, 1-2-3, land a takedown. Um, Kai's takedown defense has kind of been tested, but not really at the same time. Like Juan Archuleta, as I understand it, is a former champ in Bellator, if not at least a title challenger. And he also is one of the only individuals in that promotion ever to beat Patchy Mix, who continues to dominate people. So, like, if you really want to kind of dig deep, like Kai definitely has some respectable wins under his belt, but I just don't think, like, I still think there's levels, right? And it kind of just comes down to, like, yes, there's good fights to be found in Rizin and stuff like that, but losing to Manel Kopp is a bad look. There's just a couple, like, if you really are going to be a UFC champion, in my opinion, you should be able to walk through Rizin mostly, like, with finishes, and like he was getting wins, but he was losing fights. He got knocked out by Horiguchi. He won a couple fights by decision. It's not enough, in my opinion, to beat Pantoja. So by no means am I not confident. I'm just a little less confident than you are with Pantoja as my 2 weight.
No, yeah, yeah, fair enough. So that being said, yeah, this is definitely one we agree on, but I'm just a little, you're just slightly less confident, but yeah, I agree with you. Kai's a legit threat, and I'm actually just more excited to see how he's going to perform and just to have a better assessment where he falls within the UFC line for the next fights. But that being said, yeah,
Yeah.
Alexander Pantoja, my 5 weight, and he is your 2 weight.
Yep. Yeah, man. I mean, we could very well see. Like, it kind of reminds me of who was the guy that Abus Magomedov, who came in and fought Sean Strickland. I think it was right away. It was like it just didn't work out. Like, he actually was. I don't think he was a betting favorite, but he was a very slight dog at most. And Sean Strickland just walked him down and beat him. And that wasn't Sean wasn't even a champ at the time. So that I say that to say that it's just like, man, when you start fighting these UFC guys, man, I just think there's still a little bit of a different level there. And not to discredit Asakura, but like you said, we'll get a litmus test for him. He'll probably still be a top 5, top 3 guy in this division. It's just a belt right away. That's pretty crazy. But yeah, all that said, that's Jose's 5 weight. That's my 2 weight. And we shall move on to my 4 weight, which is going to be Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is fighting as this currently listed to be the second fight on the main card. And Bryce Mitchell, I'll tell you this. The only reason I didn't want to make him my 5 weight is because it felt too easy. I really don't want to sit here and disrespect Crone Gracie and the Gracie name, but we all just have to be real about this. Crone Gracie is not an MMA fighter, right? He is a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's not going to go in there and strike with Bryce Mitchell. That's crazy. He's going to get he's going to lay down and he's going to invite Bryce Mitchell into his guard. It's going to be boring in terms of excitement. We're not going to see any real swings because Chrome Gracie cannot compete on the feet, and I think he knows that. There's a reason his only wins in the UFC have been by submission. He either gets a submission or loses, and that's definitely going to continue. He's going to get the submission or he's going to lose. 100%. Not a question about it. I'm very confident here in that Bryce Mitchell is going to be able to win wrestling exchanges. Chrome Gracie is in the past been okay with giving up his guard. I think Bryce Mitchell uses his nickname Thug Nasty, uses elbows to land damage, and makes Chrome Gracie realize, like, man, I shouldn't give up my back. So in any case, or my guard, not back. But in any case, Bryce Mitchell is just going to dominate Chrome Gracie, in all honesty. Like I said, I don't want to disrespect his name, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Put your money on Bryce Mitchell if you want. He is minus 650, which I still, crazy enough to say, I still kind of feel like there's value there. But minus 650 for Bryce Mitchell, plus 420 for Chrome Gracie. You might as well throw Bryce Mitchell in. Bryce Mitchell by decision or KO, I would say, would be your best bet there. Maybe you can get that down to like minus 500 or something. But do be careful with parlays as always. Don't just like juice up 10 legs in a parlay and then one of your legs loses and everything is in shambles, right? So I'm not advocating that, but Bryce Mitchell is easy pickings here, I'm sorry to say. Any thoughts, Jose?
Yeah, Nick. So for this one, I agree with you. I have Bryce Mitchell as well, and he's just overall going to be the better fighter for many reasons, including being more active than Chrome Gracie, and not only that, but Chrome Gracie has not really shown a lot in his the very few times he's been in the UFC. He's just not shown much evolution in his game. Like when you think of Chrome Gracie, obviously when you think of the Gracie name, you think of jiu-jitsu, but Chrome Gracie, he's literally living up to that name. Like he's literally just only focusing on jiu-jitsu, and it doesn't seem like he really cares about the other aspects of mixed martial arts, which really showed when he lost to Charles Jourdain. And we know he's kind of doing that thing where like Mike Hall and Paul Craig do what Paul Craig used to do, where they would just almost immediately want to fall to their butt and just want to try to grab a leg or just get a hold of you without really incorporating any wrestling or striking or setting it up whatsoever. Almost just a lazy way of just going to the ground and just trying to pull him in your guard. And Bryce Mitchell is just too smart for that. Again, Charles Jourdain was able to avoid that. And if they can avoid that and force Chrome Gracie to fight and make him stand up and strike, then they easily already have him figured out and is a coast to victory. That's really what it is. Again, Chrome Gracie, major jiu-jitsu guy, just avoid the ground and stay on the feet. And Bryce Mitchell, the thing with him is this is a good matchup for Chrome Gracie in terms of Bryce Mitchell. Bryce Mitchell is a strong grappler and he has really good jiu-jitsu. Out of Bryce Mitchell's 16 wins, he does have 9 via submission. But Bryce Mitchell, he doesn't he throws on the UFC shows that he throws less significant, he lands less significant strikes per minute. But I honestly think like in this matchup with Chrome Gracie, it's just he's going to land them more on the feet. I think he's going to just look far superior on the feet and just actually look like a legit pure striker compared to Chrome Gracie. Especially again if Chrome Gracie goes to the ground. I would feel confident with Bryce Mitchell going into Chrome Gracie's guard, but I think Bryce Mitchell is just going to be way too smart and just completely not want to toy around with that and just try to beat Chrome Gracie up on the feet and ultimately beat him unanimously. I think will be the case. He possibly could knock out Chrome Gracie, but I think he's just going to beat Chrome Gracie in every other aspect but the grappling department. And I think on the grappling department, yeah, it's going to be if they do decide to just grapple with each other. I think it's just going to be a fun back and forth type of battle, but I really don't see one or the other out grappling each other. I see more Bryce Mitchell out striking and just being the better fighter on the feet against Chrome Gracie. So that being said, yeah, I agree with you on Bryce Mitchell, and he is my 3-weight.
Sounds good, man. Yeah. So, okay. So we pretty much do agree. I think there's decent likelihood for a KO. I mean, maybe not a whole lot because Crone just doesn't really put himself in danger by nature of what he's trying to accomplish. But yeah, I just don't have any respect for his boxing acumen. He hasn't really improved at all either. Like he took a, what was it, like 3 or 4 year break between losing to Cub Swanson and Charles Jourdain, and that entire time did not get any better at striking. Did not practice boxing at all. Like wouldn't you want to, like, if you're truly trying to, like, I guess do anything other than just make some money, wouldn't you want to, like, improve? And even if you are in it for making money, you would make more money by winning. So would you not want to increase your skills by also boxing and practicing that? It blows my mind. But I am not his coach, and he still could destroy me in a fight. So I can't talk crap about it. But I definitely will have $0, 0 cents on any fight he's ever fighting professionally on him. That's for sure. With that said, though, that will be my 4-weight, and that'll be Jose's 3-weight on Bryce Mitchell, and we can move on to Jose's 4-weight.
Yes, so for my 4-weight, this is actually the welterweight bout between Shavkat Rakhmonov and Ian Gary. Right now, I'm actually not seeing these on FanDuel, the
Shavkat's
stats.
minus 400.
Okay, Shavkat minus
Gary's
400.
285.
Plus 2. Okay. So yeah, so I'm this one, yeah, I'm going with the minus 400 Shavkat Rakhmonov. That being said, yeah, like I'm going with him just because both dudes are obviously undefeated, but I just think Shavkat he's, I think, just looked a little better in his last few fights against, obviously, like submitting Stephen Thompson and Jeff Neal versus Ian Gary. Ian Gary, he got that win against Michael Venom Page, but I thought there was a lot of room for improvement there. That I felt like he just pretty much just sat on type of Michael Venom Page, and I just don't think he'll be able to do that to Shavkat Rakhmonov. And then he also went split decision with Jeff Neal. And the thing with Shavkat is, like, he has a high finishing rate. Out of his 18 wins, 8 via KO and 10 via submission. Where Ian Gary, out of his 15 wins, he does have the knockout power. He has 7 KOs/TKOs, only 1 submission, and 7 by decision. So the way I view this one going is, yeah, I think Shavkat will get the better of Ian Gary and possibly finish him. I do think like, just because of the high finishing rate Shavkat has. If not, like, I'll say he's definitely just going to win. I want to say finish, but he's definitely going to win because Ian Gary is definitely going to be the toughest test Shavkat has had in his career, and likewise how Shavkat's going to be Ian Gary's toughest fight of his career. And when it comes to the feet, like, again, Ian Gary, he's gonna I thought Ian Gary would be the bigger guy in this one. He is 6'3", but Shavkat's actually the one that has a 2.5 reach advantage over Ian Gary. So I think that, like, and to me that's pretty huge because Shavkat too on the feet, again, I think of him a lot as a grappler, but he does have good striking. He lands 4.12 significant strikes per minute, and Ian Gary lands 5.5. And Shavkat absorbs 2.41 while Ian Gary absorbs 3.17. So I'm liking the way this looks on the feet. I think it's going to be a really fun back and forth. But I just think once Shavkat gets a hold of Ian Gary, I do think he's probably going to do something similar like he's won his last couple fights, and he's going to submit him one way or another, like by some form of a rear naked choke, whether it's on the chin or directly on the neck, and whether he has his back or a weird bulldog hold like he did to Jeff Neal. I think Shavkat is probably just going to end up getting a hold of Ian Gary's neck at some point and submit him. I think that's pretty much will be the Shavkat's, if he were to finish the fight. I think that will be more likely. The way he wins it is going to be by submission via it's going to be via submission, and if not, it's going to be decision. But if Ian Gary wins, honestly, the best way I see Ian Gary is outpacing Shavkat getting tired in the later rounds, in the late second to third round, and knocking Shavkat out. Like that, I can see Ian Gary winning that method, is knocking Shavkat out in the later in the rounds. So, but that being said, this one, I think Shavkat truly is the better fighter, and I think he's going to get the victory in this one, and therefore he is my 4-weight. What are your thoughts on this one, Nick?
This one will be a disagreement. First disagreement for this fight. card here for this show. I'm putting a one weight on Ian Gary here. So obviously a lot less confident for me not putting Ian Gary as my 5 weight or anything crazy like that, because it is recognition that Shavkat is the more dangerous fighter. I'm not sure I could agree yet that he is the better fighter overall. I think he's way more dangerous, 100%, and that's why I'm nervous to be putting too much more than just a one weight on Ian Gary. But in all reality, like you kind of summed it up well, man. This is the both of these guys' biggest tests, and what I find interesting is that, as I understand it, these guys have sparred together. I'm not sure that they've like done a whole lot of same camp work, but I do know that they have sparred in the past. And what's interesting to me is, as I understand it, Ian Gary does not is not the kind of guy who's just like, I'll fight anyone anywhere. Like, he declines fights. Obviously, he declined Colby Covington, right? He's not gonna just fight anybody. And the fact that he accepts a fight against Shavkat, and knowing that they've sparred together, like, we may not have footage, we might not know who won the sparring, this or that, right? And yeah, of course, sparring is way different than being in the cage. When money's on the line, of course, this and that legacy. But all I gotta say is Ian Gary must feel some level of confidence. He must feel like he knows something. He must seen Shavkat's tape and say, nope, this is a guy I can beat. I do recognize there's maybe a small reach disadvantage for Ian Gary, but I think the height advantage kind of offsets it too, because Shavkat kind of has to throw his arm a little further to reach Gary's head. It's just one of those things that, I don't know, maybe I think they kind of offset in any case. Like, I don't think Shavkat's going to win solely based on his reach advantage of a couple of inches. And in all reality, the last thing I want to mention is that Shavkat may land a takedown and a half per 3-round fight, but he has less than a third takedown accuracy percentage. So Shavkat is landing, at best, 1 of every 4 takedown attempts. Ian Gary's takedown defense isn't amazing at 69%, but I do believe if Ian Gary can keep this on the feet, that's going to be his best path to victory. He's going to want to keep the distance with Shavkat, and he'll have the better chance of doing that in a big cage for a pay-per-view event. So I do think if Ian Gary executes a good strategy of staying on the feet, practicing takedown defense, practicing sprawls, and just using a little bit offensive wrestling even. He was able to take Michael Page down a couple of times. Maybe if he sprawls and finds himself on top of Shavkat, deal a little damage on top and win the round. Just saying. So those are all ways I could see Ian Gary getting himself a couple of round wins to get a decision against Shavkat. I do agree with Jose. There's way less likelihood Ian Gary gets a finish here. This is really Ian Gary by decision, almost specifically. And if you go Shavkat's direction, you probably say Shavkat inside the distance, in my opinion. So that's what I gotta say.
Yeah, so yeah, this one's definitely, again, both guys are so good. Like, I do see it going either way to some degree. But again, like, I think this one, just Shavkat, just his high finishing rate too, is just really what has me have him up there as well, because he's just never gone to decision. And you know, like, and if he wins this one, he could win via, because this could be his first decision win, because that's how good Ian Gary is. Like, where if even if Shavkat beats him, probably, will be tough to finish him. But submission is legit, and Ian Gary decision, or even Ian Gary knockout on Shavkat is legit. But that being said, yeah, this one in some is one we're gonna have to agree to disagree on. I have Shavkat as my 4-weight, and you have, I have Shavkat as my 4-weight, and you have Ian Gary as your 1-weight.
Cool. Well, with that said, let's go to my last handicap for this card. As we've already covered my 5-weight Movsar Evloyev, and we just covered my 1-weight in Ian Gary. That was Jose's 4-weight in Shavkat. So let's move forward to my 3-weight, and this will actually be by process of elimination my last pick handicap for this card. And Jose's got 2 left, his 2-and-1 weight. So we'll see if he's got a pick on this fight. But for the feature fight, at least I'm pretty sure this is the feature fight of Saturday afternoon. Yes, it is. This is a heavyweight bout between Ciryl and Alexander Volkov. And this is a tough one, but for me, in the end, as much as I want to, because let me preface this with saying that Ciryl is a minus 340 favorite, and Volkov is a plus 250 dog. So with that in mind, I wanted to be able to say Volkov is great underdog value. He's so good at keeping distance, and he's just gonna slice and dice with Cyril Gane and get a decision win. But in all reality, man, like who would I be to say that I'm confident in doing that? The likelihood of that occurring is in all reality pretty low when looking at it. Cyril Gane, I guess it's not like a huge concern when you fight Volkov to get knocked out, but of course Cyril Gane's never been knocked out, and nobody can really stand with him. Like, I could go so far as to saying that even Francis Ngannou was resorting to wrestling against Gane. Like, maybe I shouldn't say resorting, like Francis wouldn't have won the fight anyway, but that's the last that's a fight Francis was actually wrestling the most he really ever had. So whether or not that was what Francis needed to do to win the fight, he was doing something that he doesn't conventionally really do against his opponents, and he felt the need to do that against Gane. That's just one of those spots that I like. Of course, John Jones finishing Gane on the ground. In my opinion, it's guys identifying a weakness and exploiting it. And Volkov just simply won't be able to do that, in my opinion. Volkov has a couple submission wins under his belt, but I don't see him going for takedowns here. I really think he's got confidence in his stand-up ability, which he should. He is truly one of the best, especially when it comes to keeping his distance and just using damage over time to win decisions. And he does have, like, he choked out Tai Tuivasa last year, so he does have submission wins under his belt. It's not that common. I don't expect it to be something that is really that threatening against Cyril Gane. So with those things said, I see no reason to pick against Cyril Gane. This is just, it's one of those spots. Like, they of course already did this rodeo. Cyril Gane beat Volkov by unanimous decision, and I just don't, like, looking back from then to now, if anything, Gane got a little better because he had all the experience against Francis and John Jones, and he was able to beat Tuivasa as well. But, like, Volkov, I feel like, is kind of similar. Like, he lost to Aspinall, but beat a couple of lower end knockout artists. That's pretty much what Volkov did. So I'll definitely eat my words. If he can beat Gane this weekend, Volkov completely just nuked the heavyweights, really, like, rankings in general, because you feel like Tom Aspinall should fight John Jones, and then Gane should probably be next in line. But if Gane loses to Volkov, there's no reason to say Volkov. I mean, he'll now be on a 5-fight win streak, and there's no reason to say he isn't the next best. So it'll be interesting. This definitely could have title implications, and the same said with Gane. Like, if Gane gets the win and John Jones retires or fights Aspinall then retires, you would think Gane versus Aspinall would be the next best chance, or the next best thing to make. So in my opinion, this is a really good fight for a feature fight in the main card here. Heavyweights, we'll see him bang it out, but in the end, I think Gane gets this done. Jose, what do you think?
Yeah, Nick. So for this one, I'm going to agree with you. I have Cyril Gane as well. He is my one weight just because Alexander Volkov is just on a tear right now, on a 4-fight winning streak. And, he's just, I feel like Volkov is just, throughout his UFC career, he's just been getting better and better. And there's even some fights, some fights we didn't see enough of him, like when he got taken down right away and submitted by Tom Aspinall. And then there's times where we've seen him where he looks really good and just loses it last minute, like Derek Lewis, and then he just completely gets unanimously loses one way or the other via wrestling or striking by, like, Curtis Blades and Cyril Gane. So I think in between those, he's just looked really good though in terms of his striking, being on the feet, and I think he's probably a good matchup for Cyril Gane in terms of heavyweight that can match him in striking. And yes, Cyril Gane did beat Alexander Volkov unanimously the first time they fought, but I think I think Volkov has just gotten a lot better, and being the second time around, I feel like he's only going to be harder for Cyril Gane. I still have Cyril Gane. He is my one weight, but I just think that he's my one weight because I just think that Alexander Volkov is going to be just tougher the second time around now. But I do think Cyril Gane will have the confidence of beating Volkov already the first time around. And Volkov just has, compared to Cyril Gane, at least in MMA, Alexander Volkov has just a lot more experience. So the fact that Cyril Gane was able to beat Volkov the first time around, with Volkov having a lot more experience in MMA than Cyril Gane, I think, that's definitely just a huge confident boost for Cyril Gane. But I just think, as you mentioned, Cyril Gane also has had time to get better himself. And I wouldn't be surprised if we did see more wrestling coming out of Cyril Gane this time, because that's just definitely something that, we just definitely see over time, like we saw with Francis. I think maybe we'll start seeing that a little more with Cyril Gane. So if Cyril Gane decides not to only strike with Alexander Volkov, but does decide to mix it up a little bit and try to get his own takedown, I think he will ultimately get this victory. And I think just how good he is and how he matches up with Volkov. Physically, both are big dudes, both tall. Volkov is the taller guy, but Cyril Gane has 1 inch reach advantage over Volkov. Just both are massive dudes, and I think that physically. Cyril Gane, nothing to worry about, but I think it's more the technique wise, it's going to be a little tighter there. And I just think Cyril Gane is going to be a little better technically on the feet than Volkov, but it's going to be a really they're going to be really close matched up there. Like the fact that Volkov is that much of an underdog is to me is crazy, because I do see him as an underdog. I do see a lot of value with Volkov being a plus 250 underdog. I do see value in that, but again, in this one, I'm just going with Cyril Gane. He's already beat Alexander Volkov before, and he's just one of the better heavyweights. These are two of the best heavyweights when it comes to striking alone, outside of the champ and the interim champ. And that being said, Cyril Gane is my one weight. It's a crazy game, heavyweights. He can be finished by Volkov himself. But that being said, yeah, I'm going with Cyril Gane, but he is my one weight.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, I'm just kind of thinking the same, dude. Like, it's one of those spots like, but Gane has never been knocked out. I don't want to be one of those guys that like, oh, you've never been knocked out, so he won't. It's real possible too. It's heavyweights, a lot of power in those swings, and really at any time, any of those heavyweights could get knocked out in the wrong angle. You get your chin knocked at the wrong angle, it's all over. So that's why you got to be careful betting these heavyweights. I always used to say I'm not betting a heavyweight unless it's John Jones. So still be very careful on this. Cyril Gane should win this fight, but he is minus 340. That's a lot. That's steep to pay 340 to win 100 on a guy who could get knocked out, because these guys are 260 pounds. So simple as that. Take from that what you will, and we have one more pick from Jose.
Yes, so for this fight, this is actually going to be the light heavyweight bout between Anthony Smith and Dominic Reyes. Both guys, you were at the top of at this division at one point. Both fought John Jones for the title. Both lost to John Jones, and you could argue that both Anthony Smith could have became actually champion via the disqualification from John Jones, and Dominic Reyes, if it would have swung his way, he could have been champ. But it's just crazy to see, years later, now they're finally fighting each other, just kind of I don't know, kind of out of their prime to some degree. At least I think Dominic Reyes is definitely out of his prime. And that being said, for my two-way, I'm actually going to go with Anthony Smith in this case. Anthony Smith is a plus 255 underdog, so he's definitely going to be my dog of the week, while Dominic Reyes is a minus 350 favorite. And for me, it's kind of crazy. I like Dominic Reyes a lot, and I actually was considering going with him in this one, but it's just I don't know. The best way to say it is Dominic Reyes. He just looked really good just this one fight against Dustin Jacoby. But I think even then, even though he got a first round KO, he did look a little sloppy. He looked like he rushed it, and he did get clipped by Dustin Jacoby for a bit too. It wasn't just a straight, clean, perfect knockout. Dominic Reyes did eat some in that short amount of time. And Anthony Smith is just a really well-rounded fighter. So in this one, I think, he's not going to rush to knock out Dominic Reyes. I think Anthony Smith is almost probably going to drag it out and beat Dominic Reyes unanimously, or even submit Dominic Reyes, and possibly knock him out. Again, Lionheart is just so well-rounded, but I think ultimately, I think he can easily win this via unanimous decision, just because Dominic Reyes, he's just not looked the same since that fight with John Jones. And even then, if you the most impressive wins I think he has is definitely the Jared Cannonier fight and the Volkan Ozdemir fight. But Chris Weidman, that was a Chris Weidman that like shouldn't have even been matched with Dominic Reyes. Ovince St. Preux has been already out the door for the UFC for a while. And then the other fights, they just showed how Dominic Reyes does against top five dudes, up to the point where even Ryan Spann was knocking him out in the first round. So, and Ryan Spann, again, he's out of his 22 wins, he's only got 6 KOs/TKOs. So we know that and again, I want to take any credit away from Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann has power, but I think Dominic Reyes has less of a chin than what Ryan Spann has power. And so I think even Anthony Smith could actually, Anthony Smith has 20 KOs, and I do think Anthony Smith has the power to knock out Dominic Reyes. But that being said, yeah, this one I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith. I think Anthony Smith is just an overall more well-rounded fighter. I think on the feet, Anthony Smith is gonna go toe to toe with Dominic Reyes, and I just think like the hits that Anthony Smith lands on Dominic Reyes will do more damage to Dominic Reyes than the hits Dominic Reyes will land on Anthony Smith. Um, that again, that last fight, I don't want to say he got lucky, but I do think he just rushed it, and there could have been a moment where Dustin Jacoby actually I feel like could have knocked out Dominic Reyes as well. But I'm happy Dominic Reyes got this win. The fact that the fact that he's just this big of an underdog is crazy to me, and I see a lot of value in Anthony Smith being I mean, I should say the fact that Dominic Reyes is this big of a favorite is crazy to me, and the fact that Anthony Smith is a plus 255 underdog, it's just hard to say no to that. Like that's a very I like that. I see a lot of value in him as the underdog, and so that being said, yeah, I'm gonna go with Anthony Smith on this. Anthony Smith too, for example, has been beating. He's up there in age too. He's 36, but he has gone in and beaten younger dudes as well. Even at this later in his career, beating 27-year-old Vitor Petrino most recently earlier this year. So he's still going out there and getting at it with younger fighters and performing exceptionally well. So I like Anthony Smith as an underdog. Nick, I know we already went through all your ranks, but I'm just curious, do you have any idea, any thoughts or opinions on this fight?
Yeah, dude, I honestly could talk all the fights. It would just take up too long for a show. But either way, at least for now, maybe we can expand in the future. But either way, I found this one really hard to pick. But in the end, I agree. And if I had to decide, I would agree with your assessment on the value for the line here. And I would take Anthony Smith just because like plus 250, 255 for a guy like Anthony Smith is great value. You look at some of the, I think some of the perception against him is like, oh, he just loses a lot of fights, blah, blah, blah. And then you look and it's like, okay, he lost to Roman Dolidze, Khalil Roundtree. Those guys have looked amazing. Like Khalil Roundtree stood toe to toe with Alex Pereira longer than most light heavyweights can. And Roman Dolidze has looked really good lately as well, getting a couple of wins. I would say Anthony Smith's worst loss is probably Johnny Walker. I mean, that's not bad at all. Like at least unless you go like way back into like the 2016s and stuff. Like we don't really care about that. We want to look about more recent. And yeah, losing to Johnny Walker is kind of rough. It was by decision. At least he didn't get knocked out. But in all reality, Anthony Smith is truly in all of his fights. He's dogging it out with some of the younger guys that are solid, and he might be 36, but I don't think he's truly like the thing that's holding him back is just the sheer amount. Like he's got 57 professional MMA fights, so he might not be able to last as long as a guy like Glover because that's just a lot of damage to take over 57 fights. And um, Dom Reyes, I couldn't believe it, man, is only 34 years old, and he's only had 17 professional MMA fights. It's just crazy to me. Like, I would have thought Dom Reyes is like 37 and had at least 20 fights under his belt. But nope, he has 17 total professional fights. That's not counting just the UFC either. He only has 11 UFC fights, and he's 34. Like, he's also theoretically still got plenty left. And yeah, he took a tough 4-fight losing streak, but the worst loss in that streak was Ryan Spann. And yeah, that's a tough, like looking back, it's kind of similar to losing to Johnny Walker for sure. So for all those reasons, I did not have enough confidence to put a weight on this. But considering the fact that I am so even on this, I would totally take the value in Anthony Smith at plus 250.
Yeah. So yeah, okay, yeah, that's great to hear. I definitely think yeah, like I like Dominic Reyes a lot, but definitely I think this one's definitely Anthony Smith's for the taking, and just him as an underdog. I see a lot of value. So Yeah, this one, Anthony Smith is my two weight, and you don't have a pick on it, but you like the assessment of going with Anthony Smith.
Yep. Yes, sir. So that'll do it then for us here at our main picks here for UFC 310. Of course, there's some fights in this list we did not get to that are pretty exciting. I could rattle off a couple quick ones. Kennedy and Chukwu's going to open up the prelims against Lucas Brzeski. This is going to be at heavyweight. Kennedy moved up from light heavyweight. I think that's a good move here. I think Kennedy still got some speed, but also has power without having to cut down. Take Kennedy in that fight all day long. I'm also going to look to take Joshua Van against Cody Durden. That's an interesting stylistic matchup. Cody Durden is definitely a dog, but Josh Van is going to clip Cody Durden and knock him out cold. One of the other interesting fights, Chris Weidman versus Eric Anders, some oldies. And I believe this is like a rescheduled instance. Chris Weidman talking about not getting paid even though he showed up on weight and was ready to fight. So the UFC ought to pay this man because he is delivering time and time again. Why not? I'm just going to say let's take Chris Weidman in that fight. I think he stays in shape a lot. I think the last main one is Randy Brown versus Brian Battle. What a show there. I couldn't be confident enough to put a weight on it, but I'm too big of a fan to not want Brian Battle to win that fight. Sorry, Randy Brown, you're gonna get finished by our boy Brian Battle, who likes to go into places that aren't his, beat somebody, and then talk crap about him in front of their home crowd. I love that about Brian Battle, baby. So that being said, enjoy UFC 310. Let us know down below who you'll be picking, who you'll be siding with. And as always, we will be back for each UFC fight card as it pertains through the rest of the year and into next year. So we will have this pay-per-view event, and then a week after that, we're going to have UFC Fight Night Colby Covington versus Joaquin Buckley. That'll be an interesting card, and that'll actually be the last card of the year. So 2 more cards, including this Saturday, remaining in 2024. Let's make them enjoyable. And until then, have a good week.